What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Network. Today, we're discussing the Week 11 waiver wires. And Week 11's waiver wire is really for the absolute sickos. So if you're one of those sickos that's trying to get the leg up on those idiots in your fantasy football league, do me a favor and smash that like button down below if you like my content. You have no idea how much that truthfully helps me out. Plus, hitting that subscriptions bar as well as that notifications bell helps you out as well. And never be afraid to drop a comment below. Like I said, we're getting into that Week 11 waiver wire today. We're going to discuss some of the changes that happened after Week 10, get through some of the Week 10, the scores, the finals, the news that happened in Week 10, and really start to dive into players that can help you not only for this week, but going into your playoff push, because we know now the season is starting to wrap up. We need to really maximize those wins to either get into the playoffs or maximize our seeding and hopefully get that first round bye. So let's get into anything without further ado. Let's get things started now. Of course, we got to start things off by talking about the bye weeks. The bye weeks this week are mostly going to be, it's really just two of them, the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. You might not have many players missing from these two teams, but you could have Daniel Jones starting. You could have JT, of course, at running back, Alvin Kamara at running back. There could be a couple players that we need to replace this week, and that's what we're going to be discussing here today in this episode, is getting through some of these players that we're going to be talking about. But mainly, I want to start out with my number one priority waiver wire ad, and that's going to be Tez Johnson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tez Johnson from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to be the player that's going to be the number one waiver wire pick for me, just because you're looking at, with the Chris Godwin injury, Chris Godwin suffered a setback in this previous week. So you're looking at Chris Godwin really coming in and having some issues. You're looking at Tez Johnson being able to get that 81% route share week 6 through 9. You're looking at him also having a 16.5% target share over that same span, week 6 through 9 as well. You're looking at this being a potential high-scoring matchup this week for Tez Johnson and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's playing against a defense that is very weak against the slot, and that's where Tez Johnson likes to make his money at. So you're looking at Tez Johnson from the Buccaneers. Like I said, with that Chris Godwin injury, setback really means that he could be a reliable weekly play, not just somebody that you can plug and play this week, but you're looking at him being somebody that can, after this Buffalo Bills matchup, that can be somebody you might consider being able to put in your flex and could save your playoff run in their fantasy football season, this week. Now, moving on to the top, to the players that should obviously already be rostered. The players that should already be rostered, I wanted to add one to this list. He's going to be later in the graphics. We'll talk about it again later when he comes up. But Blake Corum should be on this list as well. You're looking at him being, now that we've kind of gone through everything, you're looking at Blake Corum being available in or being owned in 62% of leagues. You're looking at Troy Franklin from the Denver Broncos being owned in 58% of leagues. Alec Pierce being owned in 54% of leagues, and Joe Flacco being owned in 53% of leagues. All four of those players, if they are available in your fantasy football league, they're worth going out and looking to see if they're available. They are available in almost half of leagues, but if your league is competitive, then truthfully, you may not have the opportunity to lock in one of these players. And that's okay, because we have more players for you to lock in on. Starting off with our running back additions, we're going to go with this week. You're looking at Tyler Algier from the Atlanta Falcons being my favorite running back ad so far on this list. You're looking at Tyler Algier having 11 carries for 57 yards and 2 touchdowns last week in week 10. He's the clear goal line back, and Atlanta has an incredible 3-game schedule coming up, making him an absolute immediate flex option due to the high touchdown equity that he may represent alone. Then you also have Trey Benson. You're looking at him. I don't have him on here, but Trey Benson, we did talk about him in last week's episode, coming back from injury. You're looking at him being a starting running back when he does come back from this injury. So he's somebody that I want to add in here. But right now, while Trey Benson may still be not playing in week 11, you're looking at Amari Demercado being somebody that I would happily pick up. Both running backs for the same reasons. Trey Benson is going to be more of the long-term running back than Amari Demercado, because when he comes back, like I said, he is the starting running back, and he's going to take over for the current starting Amari Demercado. Now, Amari Demercado has played decently over these past few weeks and may eat into a little bit of Trey Benson's production, especially with the Arizona Cardinals not having a ton to play for if they don't start putting a couple of wins together. However, like I said, Trey Benson may be somebody that could save your season in the flex position here. Then we have Travion Henderson from the New England Patriots. You're looking at him being the ultimate long-term stash. He had 2 touchdown runs of 55 and 69 yards in week 10, and it's about time. We have been absolutely waiting with bated breath when it comes to this TreVeyon Henderson pick this year. I know I talked about him a lot in our pre-draft process, and TreVeyon Henderson ended up being somebody. It took 10 weeks, but it's finally freaking here. TreVeyon Henderson's season has arrived. He has the pure explosiveness that the Patriots need, and that Ramondre Stevenson has not been able to present. If Ramondre Stevenson does end up missing time, you're looking at TreVeyon Henderson being an instant running back 2 candidate in your fantasy football roster, in your fantasy football waiver wire as well. Now, moving on to the wide receivers, we talked about Parker Washington a little bit last week. Parker Washington is going to be a decent add. Now, you are looking at Darren Waller coming back here in the next few weeks, and we're going to be talking about Darren Waller here in a couple of minutes, but you're looking at Parker Washington having a phenomenal game so far, because you're looking at Jalen Waddle having the injuries. You're looking at Tyreek Hill having the injury. You're looking at Darren Waller having the injury, so injury has presented opportunity for Parker Washington. They're going to have to throw the ball somewhere when it comes to Tua and this offense. Parker Washington has been the absolute benefactor of this. You're looking at him commanding a 30% target share in week 10 and him coming off that touchdown. This is also because you're looking at the Miami Dolphins being desperate for a deep inside threat. His volume should keep him at least as a solid flex play for the short term, the immediate short term. Then we have Trey Tucker from the Las Vegas Raiders. Not somebody we want to spend a ton of time talking about, because we've been talking about Trey Tucker for weeks. If you haven't really seen it, go back, look at some of these last episodes. Trey Tucker, when you're looking at the Raiders offense, it's not an offense you terribly want to be a part of, but if you need those opportunities, it's how you end up with Wan'Dale Robinsons of the world in your fantasy football roster. You're looking at Trey Tucker being that same spot. Trey Tucker at the current moment is going to be somebody that I definitely think is going to be necessary to add into your fantasy football lineup. But you're looking at Trey Tucker being somebody that, truthfully, since the fantasy football trade deadline, or the fantasy football trade deadline and the real deadlines in trades have come up, Trey Tucker has been the benefactor of all of it, because who else is going to be available in Las Vegas? Now you're looking at the tight end struggling a little bit, but Trey Tucker is going to start eating later in this season. Now we got Jerry Jeudy from Cleveland, another player we've been talking about a lot. He broke through in week 10 with 6 catches and a touchdown on 12 targets, and that's the big number that we want to pay attention to. Since Kevin Stefanski handed play calling over to Tommy Rees, Jerry Jeudy saw his season high in receiving yards, in receptions, and in targets. The scheme is going to work for Jerry Jeudy. Dylan Gabriel may not be the best quarterback, but he's trying, you guys. I swear to God, he's trying, and Jerry Jeudy is going to be the benefactor of this offensive coordinator switch, this play calling switch in Cleveland. And then we have Adonai Mitchell from the New York Jets. We talked last week that Adonai Mitchell might be more of a in the future conversation, but the future has arrived faster than we expected. Adonai Mitchell, you're looking at Garrett Wilson going out for at least 3 weeks with this injury. Adonai Mitchell is going to be the immediate benefactor. You're looking at him being available in 99% of leagues. Justin Fields has to throw the ball somewhere, and Adonai Mitchell is the beneficiary of this huge volume gap and the huge high upside plug and play opportunity that you get here in this offense. Now, moving on to the tight ends that we want to be talking about, we have a bigger list of tight ends because tight end has been hard to pick through this year, and all of the tight ends that we've been talking about have been kind of interchangeable. So again, we're going to still talk about Colston Loveland, Theo Johnson, tight ends that we've talked about in previous weeks. As I said earlier, we were talking about Darren Waller. He's expected to come back in the next couple of weeks, the next week or so, and he was producing at an extremely high level with Tua Tagovailoa at quarterback and without Tyreek Hill in the lineup. So you're looking at him being available in 79% of leagues. I definitely would go out and get Darren Waller. And then Brenton Strange, another person coming from back from injured reserve, he's available in 90% of leagues. Sort of like Parker Washington, Brenton Strange does fill that crucial inside threat role for Jacksonville. He's a fantastic deep stash for a team that is in need of an immediate tight end streamer. So you're looking at Brenton Strange being somebody that can help carry you through a position that has had the most issue on your fantasy football roster this season, guaranteed. Now, when it comes to the other ones, of course, looking at Luke Musgrave, you have the Tucker Kraft injury in Green Bay. Well, like I said, Colston Loveland, Theo Johnson, those are going to be the top ones if they are available. We've talked about them for the past few weeks. You know what to expect from these 2 here. They're going to be my 2 priority waiver wire ads when it comes to tight end. However, there are some pretty good options coming back with all these injuries as well this season. Now, back to the quarterbacks we're going to be talking about. Jacoby Brissett is who I really want to start with, even though Jared Goff's at the top of the list and he is the face of this graphic. Jacoby Brissett has been a top 12 fantasy quarterback in 4 straight games due to his rushing work and his consistent passing volume. Jacoby Brissett is somebody that you need to pay attention to if you need a replacement for a Daniel Jones, if you need a replacement for an injured quarterback going into these fantasy football playoffs. Jacoby Brissett might be a sneaky good pick. You don't want to have to put too much hope into him. However, like I said, he might get sneaky good if you're trying to get real freaking naughty when it comes to your waiver wire pickups. Now, Jared Goff from Detroit, we know with Jared Goff what this offense represents, what they have to show in this offense in Detroit. There's not that much that needs to be said. We also always know that Jared Goff plays much better in Detroit than he does on the road. Keep that in mind. He does have some good matchups coming up. Jared Goff is going to be a solid streamer and should probably be added even as a backup quarterback just in case your quarterback goes down. If you need a bye week replacement, Tua Tagovailoa, as we've talked about the Dolphins these past few weeks, being an absolutely unreliable case, it might not be the same story this week. You're looking at Tua Tagovailoa playing the Washington Commanders, who have been an absolute turnstile when it comes to allowing quarterback and wide receivers to put up numbers on them for the past 2 seasons. And then you got Russell Wilson with the New York Giants. Pay attention to him. He put up some numbers despite how the Giants played. He put up some numbers when he was the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year. Now you got Jackson Dart out with an injury for who knows how long that's going to last. However, you do know that you got Russell Wilson coming back. Now, a couple of little additions, couple of honorable mentions that I have here for you when it comes to your fantasy football waiver wires. Now, I do want to pay attention to the defenses. The Atlanta Falcons, they may have been dropped just because they're playing the Indianapolis Colts last week. They do have a couple of pretty good matchups coming up. They play the Panthers, Saints, and Jets. You can go ahead and now pick them up and set them and forget them for the next 3 weeks. That's a definitely amazing defense to look at. And then as the kickers go, you got Will Rijkaard from Minnesota. The Vikings face the Bears in a game that should have plenty of scoring. And if they fail to get into the end zone, that is going to be good for Will. Now, those are going to be the streamers, the waiver wire gems that we have for you this week. We're going to be discussing some more trade targets as we approach closer and closer to the trade deadline. We're going to be talking about the startums and sit-ups and giving you the playoff advice that you need as we approach these last few weeks of your fantasy football season. As always, I want to mention to you guys, this month, November, is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So make sure you reach out to everybody. It's okay to not be okay. Do not suffer in silence. That's what I don't want you guys to do. So make sure that you reach out to everybody. I would rather listen to your story than listen to your epilogue, listen to the end of your story, listen to your funeral. So make sure you reach out, guys. It's okay not to be okay. It's not a sign of weakness to reach out for help. As a matter of fact, it's the ultimate sign of strength. So just wanted to get that out there, as I always love to do. Thank you guys so much for all the love, all the support. Make sure if you haven't yet, you watch this far and you haven't smashed the like button. What does the boy got to do at this point? If I'm garnering your attention, why can't I garner your likes? If you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments. But as always, most importantly, keep that chin up and that attitude down. I'm going to see y'all next time. Peace out, y'all. Have a good one.